Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with the second video of the day. So I did say in the previous video that I was going to touch upon the Teela design controversy one more time, right? So we have this article from Bounding into Comics saying that Netflix reveals a Masters of the Universe creative team aimed to design Teela with a more realistic muscular perspective inspired by Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Korra of The Legend of Korra. Interestingly enough, apparently the build right for for Korra and Legend of Korra was actually based off MMA fighters, in particular Gina Carano. Interestingly enough, back when Gina was an MMA person. And actually, for Legend of Korra, that makes sense because a good chunk of the first season focuses on her being on a pro bending team, which is, I think it's pretty obvious if you've watched the show that pro bending is basically the super powered version of what we today would term mixed martial arts. But I think anybody who's ever seen uh, Gina Carano, whether it's the way she looks currently, especially when she was playing Cara Dune, or if you remember what she looked like back when she was a professional fighter, she didn't look the way um, Teela does. The closest thing may be the sideswept, the undercut hairdo when she played Cara Dune. But even then, she definitely wore it better and looked a lot better in her armor than Teela, this new version, this new take on Teela um, does here. And interesting enough to bring up Gal Gadot, she was actually considered by some to be a bit too skinny to play Wonder Woman, right? Being on the slim side. I will admit, I was kind of in that boat too, but then you remember what like Linda Carter looked like. She was pretty slim too. They've tend to cast slimmer actresses for the live action depictions of Wonder Woman. She tends to be a bit more muscular in the various animated universes or cartoons, and especially in the comics, especially when she's drawn by Frank Cho, who's definitely noted for his love of muscular women. And if you've ever seen Frank Cho's art, right, his covers of Wonder Woman, which actually got him in trouble with Greg Rucka, who was writing Wonder Woman at the time, or whether you remember his work on at Marvel Comics, in particular the cover of at the time Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, that he did back in the mid 2000s, back when she had her own solo run. You would know that Frank is probably, when it comes to modern day artists, the king of the muscle babe. And if whatever grievances I may have with the man, given what he says online at times, it cannot be denied that he's definitely one of the best artists when it comes to depicting muscular uh, women. And no muscular woman he's ever drawn has looked like Teela in this image, including his Wonder Woman. And his Wonder Woman is much more buff than typical uh, depictions of her, especially in media like the big movies. Now, I actually got sort of wrapped up in this sort of debate, right? I'm going to cover a few tweets. I don't want to linger too much on the disagreement between me and other people. I want to linger more on sort of the point and why this design to me is not good. So the general argument for this design, those who are pro this redesign of Teela have argued on basically two ideas. One, that it's more realistic because she's more muscular now and she's a swordswoman, so it's a more realistic body type. You even see it here in the title, right, with a more realistic muscular perspective. And the second is that, well, because it's He-Man, it's high fantasy, right? It's a fantasy barbarian work, so her being muscular is no issue. Now, I've addressed the realism argument in a previous video that I did about a week or so ago. But yeah, this is not realistic for a swordswoman. or anybody who does martial arts or swordsmanship. I've said that several times, both in videos and on Twitter. Now, to be fair, this is He-Man. He-Man's build makes absolutely no sense for a swordsman. People who train in martial arts or train with swords would not train to build large muscles. You would have to build muscular endurance. In fact, when I was in high school, the high school I went to um, had a fencing class for a gym class. So naturally, I took that, right? And I took it for as much as I could for the years I was in high school, right? So when the class started, the first thing that the teachers would have us do is that they would condition us, right? So we'd have to run laps, we would have to jump rope, we would have to like run and jump rope at the same time. We did a lot of cardio conditioning, and on top of that, we had to do a lot of isometric stuff, like the proper stance for fencing, and all of that stuff, and technique stuff like how to hold a foil, how to properly point the foil and all of that, right? How to score a hit, and all of that type of stuff, right? And even if you were to go online and look up, I should say, like a fencing training or fencing workout, right? We had to do, oh dear God, the amount of lunges we had to do back then. But if you were to look up um, training, right, exercise routines built around fencing or any sort of swordsmanship, right, kendo or anything like that, you're not going to see a heavy emphasis, if any emphasis, on muscle building, because it is not about building larger muscles or thicker muscles or gaining weight. If anything, weight is your enemy in those type of sports because they're so cardio based, right? That's the biggest thing. Cardio is one of the most important things in something like martial arts or fencing, because these fights can last forever. These matches can last forever. Even in boxing, right? What's the thing that they focus on the most is cardio. Even the heavyweight boxers, right? They may have a bit more heft on them, but they are still very cardio based, which is why their legs are so dang tiny when compared to the rest of their body. So, as I've said previously, if they were going for any sort of realism, Teela wouldn't be the size she is. He-Man wouldn't be the size he is. It isn't about realism, so stop trying to use this realism argument. Nothing in the world of He-Man is real or trying to be realistic or modern. Okay, the Sword of Power, takes skinny He-Man and turns him into a bodybuilder, right? There's magic and there's sorcery. None of this is real. None of this is based in any sort of modern realism or reality. So that argument goes out the window. It was never about realism. So then there's a second argument, which is, well, why can't Teela be a muscular woman? And here's the thing. I would love for Teela to be a muscular woman. I'd have no problem with that. I think her old 80s design is perfectly fine, but if they had leaned a little more muscular, right, I wouldn't have complained, right? But interestingly enough, me being in favor of a more muscular Teela is exactly what I get in trouble for, or at least get pushback about online. So let me show you guys a little bit of the conversation, because there's a lot of stuff is going on and everything, because I never know how to keep my mouth shut. But here's the thing, right? So we have this tweet from a Ansgar Odinson, whatever, right? And this was in response to Netflix Geek, who have put out a tweet about how, again, Teela's redesign is meant to be more realistic and all this other stuff, right? So I'm assuming it's a guy, writes none of the female characters on the show look masculine. Oh really? Oh really? But anyway, he says, None of the female characters on the show look masculine. I agree they aren't realistic, but they do look awesome, feminine, and badass. They look perfectly placed. Of course, when I'm trying to do a video, the phone goes off. Of course it freaking does. But anyway, they look perfectly placed in the hyper exaggerated barbarian fantasy they come from. So, I chimed in with a woman from a hyper exaggerated barbarian fantasy would look like the following. So I posted 4 images, all based in works that are based on the hyper exaggerated barbarian fantasy. The first one with the dragon is Tarna from Heavy Metal. I did a video about that when she got a armor, and people weren't happy about it. But the one, so that's Tarna, and the image directly under her, the woman in red with the sword, that is Tyrus Flare from Golden Axe. Golden Axe is an old arcade game beat 'em up that was based heavily on things like Conan, right, and whatnot. Then the one on top with the white hair and the purplish blueberry looking skin is the original Huntara from She-Ra, who was based on the lady beneath her, which is Grace Jones, as she appeared in the one of the Conan films. So we have two, sort of thick, muscular women, and then we have two because one was based on the other. We have two women who were very, very, very slim, right? So I posted images of women who were indeed in hyper exaggerated barbarian fantasy works. And wouldn't you know it, none of them look like this. Not a one of them resemble this at all. Even the more, you could say, androgynous, right? Let me see if it comes up. I don't know if it's going to work, but excuse me. Even the more androgynous looking one, right? Probably the most overtly masculine and androgynous image of those 4 is Grace Jones herself, right? The short hair, the very square looking face, right? And yet even she still looks nothing. Here we go. It loaded. Good. So this is Grace Jones as she appeared in one of the Conan films. There were several of them. I don't remember exactly which one she's in, but I know certainly she's in Conan. Because there's this hilarious clip where she's talking to some, interestingly enough, it's this long-haired white girl. I don't know if she's a princess or whatnot, but the girl's asking her about, how do you get a man, right? How do you get a man interested in you? And she literally answers her like, you grab him and take him. She looks so offended at this girl's even asking this question, right? But of the 4 images that I was just showing, this is the most overtly masculine looking one, right? With the short hair and everything, and yet still looks nothing close to Revelation's Teela, right? So for whatever this person's reason, for whatever Odin's reason, he got a bit salty with me, uh, pointing out that he had studied the works of artists like Boris Vallejo. I would later respond by literally posting a picture of Vallejo's wife, artist Julie Bell, who was a bodybuilder herself back in the 80s and 90s and has drawn very, very uh, muscular women herself in her lifetime. I did a video about some of her artwork a while back, right? So I just find it funny that he responded to me with 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 this, and I'm like, okay, here's his wife, right? But anyway, uh, I said here, I'm just pointing out what women look like in barbarian works. They don't look like Revelation's Teela. I cited objective examples as proof, right? And then he tells me that I posted women who have nearly the same body structure, you goon. Well, that wasn't very nice. I'm not a goon. I know I probably have a haircut similar, closer to Grace Jones these days, but I'm no goon. But at least he put a G instead of a C in front of that. I will give him credit for that. And then, of course, because I am a snarky person, I replied with, I had having no idea Grace Jones and the new Teela look similar in any way, because newsflash, they don't. But anyhow, right, I would go on, because again, this went on and on and on and on and on. I would go on to post some pictures of ladies who were in bodybuilding and who were notable bodybuilders in the 80s and 90s, right? Carla Dunlap, who is the one doing this pose, that thing, right, with the silvery outfit on. She's actually the first woman to, I think the first African American woman, I should say. The first female, the first Miss Olympia was Rachel McClish. Carla Dunlap, to my understanding, is the first African American Miss Olympia, right? And then the image next to her, the black lady in black in that beautiful pose, right? That is Linda Murray. I've always loved that image of her. And then the Asian lady at the bottom doing the bicep flex is Michiko Nishikawa. Sorry, Nishiwaki. Nishiwaki. She was popular in Japan back in the day, and she even did some films with Sammo Hung, I think it was. So she was even in Hong Kong cinema back then, right? But if you take a look at these images, right? Let me see if I can get them to pop up. All right, so we have Carla. We have Carla here, and then we have Linda, and then we have Michiko. Right, so I'm gonna focus here because that's my favorite. So I believe that if Teela had had a body similar to this, right, very muscular but still very beautiful and feminine, right, literally the visual representation of strength and beauty, right, I don't think many people would have had a problem. Naturally, she wouldn't be shown in an outfit this uh, revealing, right? And that's fine. She doesn't have to be in a very revealing costume, but she could have looked like this had her body been based on this image of a beautiful, muscular woman. I don't think anybody would have complained. And here's something else that I find very, very funny about this. So another person hopped in because, of course, they do, right? And this person tweets a picture of Ice. This is Ice back in the day from American Gladiators. And I'm like, dude, do you know how much I loved that show back in the day? It was like, that in pro wrestling is why I like muscular women so damn much visually. Ice was like one of my favorites. Her and Jazz were like really, really cool to me. Right? Her, Jazz, and I think it was Sky or Siren. Siren was the deaf one. Her too. But anyway, I'm like, is this image supposed to like disprove what I'm saying? Or supposed to upset me? I'm like, dude, I'm just adding this to my awesome images collection. So thank you. But here's the thing. If Teela had a body like Ice back in the 90s, right? 80s, 90s, you can tell by the hair, right? If they had taken this and put it on this, people would not be as upset as they are. The fact of the matter is, Teela does not have a muscular woman's body. I've just shown you literally several muscular women. She doesn't have a muscular woman's body. As Dizzy Izzy put it, and thank you, Dizzy Izzy. Let me. Right, so Dizzy Izzy says, and I believe Dizzy Izzy is absolutely correct, Teela has a completely different shaped face, square jaw, thick eyebrows, masculine nose, sharper eyes, denoting man. Also, her shoulders are more broader than the woman, meaning Ice, in your picture. Remove the makeup and she'd be a male bodybuilder. There is more to a woman than just boobs. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you, Izzy. Exactly. That's the point. There is a distinct difference visually between a muscular woman, as is the images I just showed, and a man, right? A masculine design on a woman. This is not muscular female. This is overly masculinized female. There is a difference. Especially since most female bodybuilders, because they look so different than your average woman, still try to hold on to their femininity, which is why they typically still wear makeup and and have long hair, and a lot of them get breast implants because when you're that lean, you don't have enough fat to have sizable breasts, right? In fact, there's a female bodybuilder, Erin Stern. I'm a big fan of her. That she's talked about, how bodybuilding has changed her life and her body, and again, the ups and downs and the struggles and everything. And there's even been a lot of female pro wrestlers, such as, of course, most famously China, but even more recently, women like Mandy Rose, right, or Alexa Bliss, who have a background in bodybuilding. But if you've ever seen any of them, then you'll know that they typically keep very, very feminine appearance because they're muscular women, not masculinized women. Even Becky Lynch, the person who literally calls herself the man, still looks very feminine. Face full of makeup, long, fiery, red hair, right? There is a difference. There is a difference between a muscular woman, a fit woman, right, and an overly masculinized one. This is simply an overly masculine design. There is not a hint of femininity in it. That is the problem. What these creators seem to not understand when they make these changes, it's always these changes to characters who already had a set look and a set design. If she were an original character, yeah, she would still get, a bit of negative attention for looking so masculine, but you wouldn't be able to complain about any change because it would be the only design they ever had. But this is not an original character. This is a terrible redesign of a character who already has an established appearance. An appearance that says heroic, or at least it's supposed to say, right? Teela's supposed to be a heroic warrior princess. Her design should always reflect those three elements: heroic, warrior, princess. Her design does not scream heroic. It does not scream princess. Maybe a little bit of warrior, but not much because that hair is totally off. I'm about to go into the hair in a minute. That haircut is not something a warrior would ever wear. If you actually look into warrior cultures, in particular the Vikings, the Native Americans, the Japanese, and the Chinese, they all have one thing in common. Their warriors kept their hair long, uber long, as did many princesses, especially in Japan and in Europe. Having long hair, right, as a princess was a sign of nobility, and it was a sign of beauty. In Japanese anime, there's literally a style, right, called the hime cut, right, meaning princess cut. In other words, like it's kind of like bangs cut like over here, and then the rest of it is just like really, really, really long. That's very popular in anime, and of course, you look at many artistic depictions throughout history of European princesses, and you'll see many of them have long hair. Teela is supposed to be a warrior princess, so long hair should have actually been mandatory. Even if you're gonna restyle it, right? They still should have kept it long. If anything, they probably just should have put it in braids or a ponytail or something, or maybe a top knot or a high ponytail. But they never should have gone with this haircut, because this haircut does not originate with either royalty or nobility or princesses or royal court or anything, nor does it originate with any warrior culture. It originates with music, relatively modern music. This haircut comes from the 70s and 80s punk movement. It's part of the punk aesthetic. And the whole point of punk, especially back in the 70s and 80s, was the fact that it was visually garish and aggressive. It was meant to repel. It was basically using clothes and makeup and hair to make yourself look unappealing, to make yourself look ugly in a way. Of course, this would change as punk went mainstream, right? And as most things do, once it goes mainstream, it sort of loses the heart of what it was about, which was rebellion at the time, but aesthetically speaking, punk was never about looking pretty. Never. Warriors, yes, to a certain point. You were first and foremost supposed to look scary, which is why they would wear makeup around the eyes and the face and everything. But there was an element of aesthetic beauty to it, the long hair and everything. In fact, long hair could be considered a sign of one's prowess in battle, right? Because a lot of cultures dictated that a warrior's hair was a long and you didn't cut it unless it got cut in battle by the enemy, which was a great disgrace, or if you lost a battle and you cut it in disgrace, right? So there was all that, and then of course princess culture, royalty, and all that stuff. Of course, you're meant to look as beautiful as you can look. So those two had a beauty element to it, but punk didn't. Punk was the very antithesis of all that. So you take your heroic warrior princess, right? Who should be appealing to your audience, especially as the lead female, right? And the character who's supposed to be the opposite, right? Of Evil Lyn, right? Evil Lyn is the shadow, and Teela is the positive representation of a warrior woman, right? So you decide to literally make her look unappealing, and you call this strong. You think that removing any trace of femininity for your lead female character is a sign of strength. I am sorry, but it is not. There's this very disturbing trend online when these type of things come up, and I've touched upon it several times, even recently with the whole Rivet thing, right? Which is this idea that if a female design has any sort of femininity, any sort of traditional female traits, then it's automatically sexualized. Doesn't matter how much, doesn't matter how little. If she in any way looks feminine, it's automatically, the idea is that it's automatically sexualized, and because it's sexualized, it's objectified, and because it's objectified, it must be harmful toward women. This like 0 to 60 jump is something I just cannot wrap my brain around. Now look, would I want a design like, say, Ivy from Soul Calibur for Teela? Absolutely not. Ivy's design wouldn't work. Ivy's design is way too visually aggressive and way too sexually aggressive. Ivy's design says dominatrix. It's meant to be sexual in nature. It would not give the right visual representation, right? Dominatrix is not the same as heroic warrior princess. Teela should look like a warrior princess. I would have been happy if they had just basically ripped off Xena or Wonder Woman, right? That's the thing. A female character does not have to be, or rather, the way I should put it is, every female character, in my opinion, should have some feminine traits, right? That doesn't mean she has to be high femme. That doesn't mean she has to be huge chested or have large hips. It doesn't mean that she has to be this uber sexy, provocative, sexually aggressive, or just sexually daring design. Not every character needs all that, right? The design should always be first and foremost to fit the character. But unless the character is meant to be androgynous for some reason or another, there should be some hints, some easy visual indicators that the character you're looking at is a woman. Same way that if you're drawing a man, you can draw different types of men: tall men, short men, masculine men, more feminine men, skinny men, right? Less muscular, more muscular, right? Uber masculine, not masculine, high mask, low mask, sure, but they should always come across as a man, come across as a male, right? It doesn't always have to be to extremes, but it should be there. The visual differences between men and women should be there, unless the character is meant to be androgynous. But most of the time, especially in these particular works, these characters are not meant to be androgynous. What is meant is that we're supposed to take this masculinized, not muscular female, masculinized version of Teela and be okay with it. And then when people are not okay with it, then of course it's anybody who isn't okay with it, as I was referred to, is a goon, right? We're problematic, especially if you're a man, right? Then it's, oh, she wasn't hot enough, you know, you it didn't make your pee pee hard. It's like, I hate that argument because look, I'm not gonna act like sex appeal is a bad thing or that sex appeal doesn't exist. Of course, sex appeal is a factor, especially if the character, and this often happens for female characters, is going to be a love interest or a potential love interest for a male character, right? But again, that doesn't mean that the character is being objectified. That doesn't mean that the character is being written for the male gaze, or that the male gaze is only sexual, is only about sexual gratification and pleasure. Believe me, no one said that Teela needed to look like a porn star. If someone made that argument that she needed to look like she starred in adult movies, then maybe you would have a point. But in all the tweets I've seen, not a soul has made that argument. And I don't think anybody would, because I don't think anybody wants that. Right? No one's looking for Teela to look like a sex goddess. That's Aphrodite. No one's asking for Aphrodite. We're just asking for Athena. Okay? We're just asking for the warrior princess, for the goddess of war. Okay? We're just asking for a little femininity in a warrior character. There was nothing wrong with depicting, as we see with these images, right? There was nothing wrong with depicting feminine strength and beauty. And now, as I've said previously, but I'll say it again, going back to Teela for a moment. While this design overall is absolutely awful, what's worse, and I've covered this in another video, so I'm not really going to belabor the point again, but what's worse is her personality, right? This was a character assassination on par with Sindel in Mortal Kombat 11. This version of Teela might as well be called Tweenla or something. I don't know, because it's not Teela. It's not her at all. It's a literal betrayal of the type of character she is supposed to be. The archetypical, supportive friend, ally, right? Warrior, goddess, and all this other stuff. It's literally a betrayal of who fundamentally the character is supposed to be. She's not supposed to be weak. She's not supposed to be a traitor whose literal reason for betrayal is, you lied to me and it hurt my fifis. That would be like Riza leaving Roy. It's like, unless you kill her, she's not going anywhere. And hell, they actually tried that toward the end of the story and she still lived. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day or night wherever you are.